let's get started.
Just to do the tires, 30.
The only thing that we've actually needed to repair is the gearbox bracket.
It's weldable.
But from now onwards, it's going to get a lot harder, especially without Bugatti's help.
But we just don't think it's safe, and that's why we can't support it.
What happens when the most expensive car brand in the world calls something unfixable, and someone refuses to believe it? In a Miami workshop, a Bugatti Chiron officially written off is being rebuilt from the ground up, outside the factory, outside the rules, and without permission. And as the car comes apart piece by piece, the real question isn't whether it can be fixed. It's what it means if it actually is. The build becomes intentional. There is a specific psychological shift that happens to every builder who survives a brutal teardown. Anyone who has spent months dismantling something this resistant, this complex, this expensive, knowing the entire time that taking it apart is only half the battle, understands exactly what that weight feels like. The constant pressure of knowing the real test has not even started yet, that the teardown was just the permission slip to enter the harder room. Matt Armstrong has walked through that room and come out the other side. Watch his recent footage carefully, and you can feel the shift without him saying a single word about it. The early episodes of this rebuild had a specific energy, the energy of someone with a point to prove. Every successful procedure was a direct rebuttal to Bugatti's institutional claims. Every split panel and separated component was evidence that the factory-only narrative was commercial fiction dressed up as technical reality. That energy served its purpose completely. The argument is over. The split is done. Bugatti said it could not happen outside Molsheim. It happened in an independent Miami workshop. What you see now is something quieter and honestly more compelling. Focused, purposeful. The settled confidence of a builder who has stopped arguing and started building. Not just toward restoring what the Chiron was before the crash, but towards something better than it ever was from the factory floor. And the list of what remains is worth understanding in full. The gearbox mounting bracket needs to be engineered and replaced.
But we've still managed to split the car in half, repair the gearbox mounting, put the car back together, start it for the first time, and replace all of the airbags.
More on that shortly, because it is where this story gets genuinely complicated. The aluminum front structure requires fabrication from scratch using components Bugatti refuses to sell. For damaged radiators need repair. Custom wheels need to be designed to millimeter tolerances around brake calipers that are engineering statements in themselves. Every part Bugatti will not supply needs to be sourced, engineered, or built independently. That is the baseline. On top of all of it, this car is getting upgraded in ways that would make Bugatti's brand team deeply uncomfortable. The owner wants the exhaust to finally tell the truth about what the W16 actually is.
I think if you've got a W16 engine, emissions isn't the first thing on your mind.
And that is a legitimate grievance. Bugatti softens the exhaust note deliberately, not because the engine deserves it, but because their market demands it. Buyers paying $3 million for the world's most powerful production car still want to drive it to dinner without rattling windows 2 blocks away. That is a commercial reality, not an engineering one. So the W16's voice gets filtered, civilized, made broadly acceptable. Matt is not building for broad acceptance. He is building for one person, one car, one engine with 16 cylinders that deserves to announce itself honestly. The entire titanium exhaust assembly has been pulled, rear subframe removed, fuse boards disconnected, bolts out, sections carefully separated. Matt's father Tony handled the physical work while Matt ran the channel. That detail alone tells you what this operation has quietly become: lean, family-driven, and moving on multiple fronts at once. The exhaust is now headed to Valvetronic in Austin, Texas. Custom fabrication. Primary cats staying in for emissions compliance because this is disciplined engineering, not reckless noise chasing. The secondary cats that strangle the W16's real character are what is being replaced, with components tuned to the engine's actual acoustic identity rather than engineered around it. Bugatti would never offer this upgrade. It does not fit the story they are selling, but it is exactly what makes this rebuild worth watching every single week. The inspection mystery. Now we arrive at the part of this story that has the automotive world paying close attention and asking questions that nobody has clean answers to yet. The gearbox mounting bracket. A cast aluminum component that connects the engine to the transmission, buried deep in the rear of the car, nowhere near the primary impact zone of the crash that originally wrote this Chiron off. When Matt's team first identified it as damaged, the natural question was straightforward. How does a front-end collision produce damage this far back in the car? The answer involves crash energy traveling through the drivetrain, transferring from the front of the car through connected mechanical systems and expressing itself as structural failure in a component that absorbs that transferred energy. It is a logical mechanical explanation, and it satisfies the immediate question of how the damage happened. But Matt started asking a different question, a more pointed one. How did Bugatti's inspectors know to look there in the first place? Think about that carefully because the implications are significant. This was documented as a front-end accident. The visible damage was at the front of the car.
Here is the front half of a Bugatti Chiron Sport, and here is the rear half of a Bugatti Chiron Sport. And
any independent inspector approaching this vehicle without prior knowledge would logically focus their attention on the front structure, the nose, the crumple zones, the components in the immediate vicinity of the impact. Checking a mounting bracket buried in the rear of the car, far from the primary damage, requiring the removal of multiple undertrays to even access, is not a standard inspection step for a front-end collision. It is the kind of targeted, specific check you perform when you already know where to look. Matt's conclusion, stated with characteristic understatement, was pointed enough to light up every automotive forum on the internet. It is possible, he explained, that the cast aluminum component between the gearbox and the engine is known by Bugatti to fail. The inspection team went straight to it. They knew exactly where to look without any obvious reason to look there. The most logical explanation for that kind of institutional knowledge is prior experience. They have seen this failure mode before. They know which crash scenarios produce it, and they know precisely where to find it when they do. Let that sit for a full moment before moving on. Because if it is accurate, and the circumstantial evidence points strongly in that direction, it reframes every single thing about why this car was written off. A manufacturer that knows a specific component fails in specific crash scenarios, knows that failure can be identified, and knows that identified failure can be repaired. That manufacturer has a choice to make about what they do with that knowledge. The honest choice is transparency. Document the failure mode. Make the replacement part available. Allow the car to be repaired. The other choice is silence. Write the car off. Refuse to supply the part. Maintain the narrative that a crashed Chiron is simply beyond saving. And here is where the business logic behind that silence becomes impossible to ignore. If independent builders and insurance companies begin to understand that a crashed Chiron can be returned to full function by replacing a known, identifiable failure component, the entire economic ecosystem around Bugatti write-offs changes permanently. More crashed Chirons get rebuilt instead of totaled. Resale values shift. The exclusivity of the brand, partly built on the mythology that these cars exist in a category beyond ordinary repair, gets structurally challenged. The story that a crashed Chiron is a tragedy rather than a problem gets dismantled one successful independent rebuild at a time. Matt Armstrong is in the process of dismantling that story, and the Gearbox bracket discovery suggests the story needed dismantling from the very beginning. Beyond Bugatti spec, here is where the narrative shifts from exposure to something even more compelling, because Matt is not just replacing the broken bracket, he is improving it. And the engineering logic behind that improvement is worth understanding in detail, because it strikes at the heart of why independent builders are becoming a genuine threat to manufacturer control over complex vehicle repair. The damaged component was 3D scanned with professional equipment, not to replicate it exactly.
Let's see what Bob can do, but I think a whole CNC machine thing is going to be way better than repairing something that wasn't probably great in the first place. That have like all the measurements and everything. Oh, yeah. That's crazy. Yeah.
Replication was never the goal, but to create a CAD model that could be studied, stress analyzed, and optimized without the constraints that governed Bugatti's original design process. The original bracket is cast aluminum. Casting is a manufacturing method with genuine advantages at scale. It produces complex shapes efficiently and consistently when you are making many identical parts. But casting comes with design constraints that have nothing to do with the engineering ideal and everything to do with the manufacturing process. Cast components require relatively uniform wall thickness throughout the piece to control how the aluminum shrinks and solidifies during cooling. That requirement forces compromises. You cannot concentrate material precisely where stress analysis says it is needed and thin it out where it is not, because the casting process demands a level of consistency across the whole component that engineering optimization does not always want. The result is a component that is heavier than it needs to be in some areas and potentially thinner than ideal in others. Not because the engineers at Bugatti lack the knowledge to do better. Their engineers are exceptional, but because the manufacturing method they chose for cost efficiency and production scale forced their hand at the design stage. The CNC machine replacement that Matt is having fabricated does not have those limitations. Material can be placed precisely where load analysis demands it. Wall thicknesses can vary based on actual stress requirements rather than manufacturing process constraints. The component that comes out of this process is, by any objective engineering measure, superior to what Bugatti originally installed. It is stronger where strength is needed, lighter where mass is unnecessary, and optimized for the actual mechanical demands of its function rather than the practical demands of a production casting line. The cost comparison is almost absurd when you lay it out directly. A replacement bracket from Bugatti, assuming they would even agree to sell one, which they currently do not, would cost tens of thousands of pounds, possibly significantly more. The CNC version being fabricated for this rebuild costs a fraction of that figure, and it is better, measurably, demonstrably, engineeringly better. This is precisely the scenario that manufacturers like Bugatti most want to avoid. Because independent builders are not just replicating factory parts through workarounds anymore, they are improving them. And once that reality becomes widely understood, the argument for manufacturer-controlled repair monopolies becomes significantly harder to sustain. The hidden logistics war. Not every part of this rebuild involves dramatic discoveries or engineering philosophy. Some of it is just the methodical, unglamorous, logistically complex work of getting damaged components assessed, repaired, and back into the build pipeline. And that part of the story deserves honest attention because it reveals something important about how this entire operation actually functions. 4 radiators were damaged in the crash, including the AC condenser.
The radiator at the front failed our pressure test, which means that we weren't able to fill the car up with coolant. Now, Bob made these radiators from scratch.
Matt transported them back to the UK for Bob to assess. And that sentence alone contains a level of logistical commitment that deserves acknowledgement. Components traveling between Miami and the United Kingdom, carried in suitcases through commercial airports, moving through channels that Bugatti cannot monitor, cannot block, and cannot interfere with. It is not glamorous. It is not the kind of content that generates dramatic thumbnail images. But it is working, and it is working specifically because Matt built a network of specialists who know their individual disciplines deeply enough that no single point of failure can stop the project. Bob's assessment of the radiators was immediate and almost dismissive in its confidence, which is exactly the kind of expert reaction that reframes perceived complexity. One radiator has a significant hole, another is heavily deformed. The condition of both, seen in isolation, looks like a problem requiring exotic solutions. Bob looked at them and said, essentially, these are just radiators. Standard high-performance radiators. Any skilled specialist can repair or fabricate these. The real technical challenge is not the radiators themselves, but recreating the exact geometry of mounting points, post connections, and bracket positions to ensure perfect reinstallation. That challenge is solved by carefully measuring the undamaged unit and fabricating new end tanks with identical positioning. It is precise work. It requires expertise and patience. But it is entirely solvable outside the Bugatti dealer network, without Bugatti parts, without Bugatti approval, and without the eye-watering Bugatti pricing that manufacturer exclusivity allows them to charge for components that, at their fundamental engineering level, are high-performance heat exchangers available through independent fabrication. Meanwhile, in Miami, custom wheels are being designed using 3D scanning technology that measures the clearances around those enormous brake calipers to millimeter precision. Getting wheel fitment wrong on a car like this is not an aesthetic problem that looks slightly off at car shows. It is a functional problem that creates interference between moving and stationary components at high speed. The scanning process eliminates that risk entirely, replacing guesswork with data and ensuring the custom wheels will integrate perfectly with the existing brake package without the trial and error that destroys expensive custom wheel projects. Every workstream is moving simultaneously. The exhaust is in Texas. The radiators are in the UK. The wheels are being designed digitally. The gearbox bracket is being CNC machined to a specification that improves on the original. The front aluminum structure fabrication is being planned and engineered. This is not a linear build process where one thing finishes before the next begins. This is a parallel operation running on multiple continents through a network of independent specialists, coordinated by a small team that has figured out how to move faster than the institutional barriers in their way. The ownership decision. There is one final detail in this chapter of the rebuild that tells you more about Matt Armstrong's confidence in this project than anything else he has said or done on camera throughout the entire process. And it is worth sitting with because it reframes the entire story one more time. Matt is considering buying the Chiron from FXG once the rebuild is complete. He is looking at selling parts of his UK collection to raise the capital. He wants to own the result. He wants to keep the car he is building. Think about what that actually means in context. This is a vehicle that the manufacturer declared unrepairable. A vehicle that was written off by insurance assessors after Bugatti's own engineering team inspected it and signed off on the total loss determination. A vehicle that required splitting a chassis in a procedure Bugatti said could not be done outside their factory. A vehicle that needed replacement parts fabricated from scratch because the manufacturer refuses to supply them. A vehicle with 4 damaged radiators, a broken gearbox mounting bracket, a damaged front structure, and an exhaust system that needed to be removed entirely. And the person who has seen all of that damage up close, who has personally overseen every stage of the tear down, who understands better than anyone on earth exactly what was broken and exactly what it takes to fix it. That person wants to own it when the work is done. He is willing to sell other cars he already owns to make that happen. That level of conviction is not performed for the camera. It is not a content strategy designed to generate engagement, though it will absolutely generate engagement. It is the natural expression of a builder who has spent months inside this car's problems and reached a conclusion that the problems are solvable, that the solutions are better than the originals, and that the result is going to be something worth owning. But beyond the personal conviction, there is a larger statement being made here. Matt Armstrong is not rebuilding someone else's car back to factory specification and returning it. He is building the car he wants to own to his own specification, with components that improve on what Bugatti originally installed, in a process that has exposed institutional deception along the way. And somewhere in that process, buried in a cracked piece of cast aluminum that Bugatti's inspectors went straight to without explanation, he may have found the proof that the write-off was never really about the damage at all. The gearbox bracket failure was known. The car could always have been fixed. The silence from Molsheim was never about protecting customers from unrealistic repair expectations. It was about protecting a story, the story that a crashed Chiron is beyond saving, that the manufacturer's verdict is final, that independent builders should look at these cars and walk away. Matt Armstrong did not walk away. He split the car, fabricated the parts, improved the components, and is now building toward the moment where he writes the final chapter of that story in the most personal and most permanent way possible, by owning the result. What's happening in this Miami workshop is no longer about restoring a car. It's about whether authority over engineering belongs to the manufacturer or to the people capable of proving them wrong. Every bracket rebuilt, every system re-engineered, every assumption quietly dismantled is pushing this Chiron further away from its original ending, and closer to something Bugatti never had to account for. Because once a machine declared impossible starts to move again under its own power, the story doesn't just change. The rules that defined it start to collapse. And when it finally rolls out of that workshop, the question won't be whether it was repaired. It will be, who really had the final word on what was possible in the first place?